Welcome to a tutorial series where I want to use Fusion to bring a 3D spaceship into live action drone footage. I want to use Fusion to import the model, animate it in Fusion, combine everything together with 3D tracking and come to this final result. Now this will be an interesting project with lots of different challenges, so I have decided to break it up a little bit. I will first discuss the model import itself, how you can in DaVinci Resolve or in Fusion Studio, how you can import the model, apply textures, take care of model animations and so on. Then I will do camera tracking. I will set up a 3D camera track so that I can rebuild a virtual scene where I can light the spaceship in a way that will later match with the real scene. I will also do some planar tracking so that I can apply some textures to the background scene, do some little paint modifications that will integrate everything a bit better. Then I will do multipass compositing, so I will set up different render passes so I can take different aspects of the scene and efficiently process them in 2D, so to glue them together really nicely in 2D. And then at the end I will add some finishing touches and add some dust effects and some other things to polish the scene. This will be an intermediate to advanced level tutorial. But don't worry, I will guide you through it step by step, and as always you find both the exercise files and my solutions for each part of the tutorial on my website, which you can download for free. So if you have already a bit of experience in Fusion, this should be fine. If you are on the beginner side, I would rather like to point you to my 5-hour-long beginner course for Fusion in DaVinci Resolve. So this might be more for you in that case, but if you have some experience, you should be good to go. So that being said, grab the files from the download package and let's dive in. The model I will be using is called Starship Luminaris. It was created by Igor Puškarić, and Igor allowed me to use it in this tutorial and to provide the files onwards to you. Thanks Igor for this. I will also point you to Igor's website on ArtStation where you can learn more about this model and also see a tutorial by Igor. So Igor created a tutorial where he shows you how he created this whole model in 3ds Max, and the textures were created in Photoshop. So if you're interested in how this model was created, you can learn more there. I really like this model for multiple reasons. First of all, I like the design, and apparently I'm not the only one. This model won an award on CG Trader, so that's great. But even better, it works well with Fusion and has some interesting aspects. So there are some animations included, there are multiple parts to this model, so there are some things to play with. And finally, it is a low polygon model, so this is more intended for games, like as a game asset, but it's also great for us because it means that for a tutorial, the model is still not too complex, so that even if you don't have the latest and greatest workstation at hand, rendering times should still be manageable. I am using Fusion Studio, which typically gives you better performance than Fusion inside DaVinci Resolve, but the steps are exactly the same. So if you don't have access to Fusion Studio and want to use it in DaVinci Resolve, you can do the same steps, you can follow along, but just be prepared that depending on your machine, you may have a bit more waiting on renderings and a bit less of interactive feeling during the work. Okay, time to load it in Fusion. I have already loaded the background plane here. I just use it for reference now. I will, in this part of the tutorial, I will not really deal with it. I just want to see in between if things are roughly matching. And later in the next part, we will work a lot with this background plane. So for now, I only want to take care of the model. You can import the model under File, Import, FBX Scene. And if you are in DaVinci Resolve, you find it in the Fusion tab under the Fusion menu, Fusion Import FBX Scene. And FBX Scene is the name of the menu, but it loads much more than FBX models. Actually, you can load OBJ models, for example, or 3ds Max models, or many other types of models here as well. In this case, I do have an FBX model, which you find in the exercise folder, so I can open this directly. I get this import menu, and here I can choose a few functionalities. If I don't want to import certain things, I can disable it, but the default will just bring in whatever is available, including the animation, and that's fine for me. So I just keep the import the way it is, click OK, and it comes in. And now let's see what we have here. I have a bit more than I need probably. First, let me start from the right. So here kind of everything is being merged together. Let's bring it into a viewer. And I have a 3D merge here, and I see the model, but I don't see textures. Here you see something red flashing up, and I see that all the textures are not being loaded because they point to some destination which has nothing to do with my computer here. So let me delete all of them and bring them, either delete or select one by one. I will just bring them in one by one, and which is faster, I think, than changing the path. So let me have a look at the texture folder, which you find in the exercise files. So we have here the diffuse map, which is here, and emissive, which I have here, and normal and specular. You also see a roughness map here. I will not be using it, and it's not supported by the illumination model, by the material model that Fusion is using here. But even without it, we get quite a lot and a good result. So I will just ignore the roughness for this tutorial. So here I have them all. So let's replace them. And you see this emissive is not connected. This is actually giving me the lights. And I will use this later for a separate render path. So what I want to do with the lights, if I want, I could directly connect them, and then you get only the lights, which looks kind of cool. I could merge them with what is here called the diffuse, but instead I will do a render later only with the lights, so that I can take them into 2D and add some blurs and light effects onto it. So I will keep the lights aside for the time being. So for now, the most important part is the base color of this model, which is called the diffuse color. So diffuse color I have here. Let me attach it where it was attached before, and you see it directly comes onto it, and it looks quite nice already. So diffuse is the non-reflective property, the base color of the model. You see here these map tools. These are UV maps, and they are used to if you want to change the texture coordinates. So if the texture does not fit onto the model but was kind of warped around, or if there's some coordinate mismatch, then the UV map can be used to fix that. But here, if I change anything, you see that the coordinates of the texture is kind of wrapped around, which I don't need here. And here, all the maps here are set to 0, 0, so there's no transformation applied. So I might as well just delete them. So I don't need them. Diffuse is attached. Then specularity. I have the specular material. Specularity tells me how shiny an object is. So it shows how mirror-like materials are, how much they give like mirror-like reflections. And this I attach here to, if I press the Alt key, I see all the inputs. I attach it to specular color material. And not much is happening out of the box, but let's first enable lights and shadows, or at least the lights, because this is a light property, so I need definitely some default light at least to see it. So now you see a bit of light and shadow here, and I probably don't see much from the specularity. Let's have a look in the material settings. Here I have diffuse settings. So here I have a diffuse color where I can actually multiply this color with the color that's coming from the texture. I will just set this to white. If you want, you could darken it here right away, but I will do this if necessary later in combination with my 2D scene. So let's keep this to white. And then I have here specular color, same thing, I can keep to white, but the intensity is here currently 0. This is the way it came from the import. I don't know why, but it means no specularity. Let's bring it up. And you see some change. The model is getting brighter, but it's not only getting brighter, it's getting brighter in certain areas. If you look closely, there are certain metal parts and parts that are highlighted here by this specularity that are getting especially bright, and this then depends on where the light source is. And on the remaining settings, so one is the intensity and the other one is the exponent. The exponent decides how pointy the light is. So let's put it to the default, and now you see you have like these kind of shiny reflections, this kind of specular highlights. If I bring the exponent down, you see it gets softer and wider, and if I bring it up, it gets extremely sharp and pointy. If you like, you can look at the scene where we are combining this. So let me have a look here at the zoom in a bit here on some areas of metal, for example, these cars here. You see here, you see a bit specular highlight here, and this is how you see it on a real scene. You see the reflection, and the rest is less shiny. See these kind of, sometimes they are blown out, so you get above white parts that are blown out. Here, for example, you see it's some metal part is just completely blown out, which can happen, and we can make this later match. So these specular highlights are important. Okay, so for now, let's just keep them enabled, and let's take care of the last bit, which is the normal map, which looks like this, and this is being used for a bump map. Now, the bump map I have to create by myself with a bump map tool. Control spacebar for the menu bump map, and let me quickly attach the normal map to the bump map, and the bump map goes into the only input where it can go, which is the bump map material input. And in the bump map, if you have this bluish kind of texture, this is a normal map which shows on the surface the direction in which roughness or surface changes should occur. So this is a two-dimensional image which displays where the surface has roughness or irregularities or certain parts which are standing out. And it does that without actually changing the geometry, but only changing how the surface is being lit. So this is a very efficient modeling technique, which is very useful. And if I have this bluish kind of bump map, I have to actually choose bump map in the bump map tool, and then most of my options disappear and the default should be fine. So here I have now the bump map attached. Let's have a look how it looks like. If I disconnect it, you see everything looks like a bit flat, and if I connect it, you should immediately see a difference. So everything looks like things are bumping out, have a bit of structure. So with, without, with. So you see the difference. So that is what the bump map does. Okay, this was the super quick crash course in materials and adding textures. I realized if this is the first time you're doing something like this, it may be a little bit overwhelming. I have recorded detailed step-by-step tutorials about these illumination models and specularity and bump maps and so on. So you find a lot of this on my website, and you can watch these tutorials if you want to learn more. Just to follow along, I think this should be more than enough. And let's next check about the animation. Let me see about the animations of this model. So I can now look at the different parts, and here you see the first part, and you see where it's located is like structure like this, which is rotating here a bit, and then you see we have some rings here which are rotating in the opposite direction, and there we have, what is this? We have some little parts here rotating, and the whole thing is waving left and right and shaking a little bit. Now this is the first thing which I probably don't want at all. So I don't want this ship to slide and wave, because I will do this if I want it to shake. I want to do it in relation to the background plane, but not like the model by itself, or not every individual part. So you see here this merge node, this doesn't have any animation at all. All the animations are on the individual components. And now all the components, one by one, the way Fusion loaded it, one by one, each component has a bit of this waviness or a bit of of this shaking, and that I definitely don't want. What I do want though are these rotations here. So if I play it back, I see here these rotations, this ring rotating one direction, the inner part in the other. There's some part underneath which rotates. However, it's rotating only 80 frames, so I definitely need to extend it to the full timeline, and full timeline means the full timeline which I have here for my background plate. So let me have a look at it one by one. First of all, I see here translation, and this is the wavy motion. So I don't have any parts which in the model like move up and down or left and right or so. I only have rotation in the model, and the whole model is shaking. So the first thing I can do is remove all these translation animations. So I will just do right click here, remove all from translate group on frame 0. So I will get rid of all of these. Remove all. Let me speed through this. Okay, so I have removed this. Now it's no longer moving, but it's still rotating a little bit, shifting around this axis, which I also don't want. So I will remove this as well, now one by one, and at the same time take care of the overall animation. I open the spline editor for this, and I set to show only selected tool, so I see one tool at a time, and I have opened it pretty far out so that I have enough space here and can still select the individual tools which are animated here. So let's start with the first one, with this part here, and you see this looks pretty wild. First of all, there's also a keyframe on the scale parameter, but the scale doesn't change, so the ship is not getting larger or smaller, so I can as well remove this. Right click, remove all from scale group, which gets rid of the scale, and I have only the rotation left. Now the rotation still looks a bit strange somewhat, right? So there's this up and down thing. So if I look at the animation, it looks pretty simple, right? It looks like just one rotation around one axis, but numerically this is actually being represented by 3 numbers, and it's kind of rotating and flipping, so this may just be from the import. I don't think it was set up this way in 3ds Max. So just when in the import here, it looks a bit strange. So it depends on how during rotation, how values are being set back to 0, and how this how the axes are being used. So here there's a flip of the x-axis in between. Now you might wonder, okay, why do I care? I do care because I cannot loop this easily. So if I just mark all and click on loop here, set loop, I have this pattern repeating, but if I look at it, you see that here suddenly it's jumping, so my looping isn't working right out of the box. And also it looks more complicated than it actually is. So instead of getting into this, I will just do the animation by hand. Let me just count how many rotations if I play. So there's 1, 2, 3 rotations. So before in the 80 frames, I have 3 full rotations. So I will just remove all of this. I will just go here on frame 0, do a right click, remove all from rotate group, and now I will just go around the y-axis here and do a rotation myself, set a keyframe at 0, and at 80 frames I know it rotated 3 full times, so I do 3 times 360 is 1080, and now I have a very simple animation, and it's rotating at the same speed and in the same direction. And now I can just take this and I can 360 degrees or multiple thereof. I can just repeat, I can just loop this. So if I go on a set loop, or you can gradient extrapolation, doesn't matter, either loop or gradient extrapolation, and it just keeps going for however long I want. Even if I extend the scene later, it will just keep rotating. Okay, so this is the first part. Let's go to the next one. And now the principle is the same. So here I have, again, some kind of strange animation, but if I look at the model here that I have here for this animation, it's just spinning in a very fast way. But actually it's not spinning that fast. It's, I think, again 3 rotations. If you try to track it once, 2 times, no, it's 2 rotations, I think. 2 rotations in this direction. So again, let me go to frame 0, remove everything here, remove all from scale group, remove all from rotate group, set the keyframe, and then I want to go in this direction this time. I need to rotate in this direction, and I set the keyframe at 0, and at frame 80 I go to 2 times 360 or minus 720. And again, mark the curve and set the loop. And it's looping. Okay, I do the same thing a few more times, and I will just quickly speed through this so that you're not getting bored. I have kept the main part here, this one, for last, and this you just see here, one parameter has this wavy motion here, and this I can just get rid of all of this completely. We just Control A, just remove everything. Oh well, we can just, as always, go here, remove all from the group here, remove all from group here. So no animation at all on this part. So this should be it. Let me close this and bring it into a larger view for a second so that we can evaluate the whole model. I don't have the lights yet. Again, I will use those separately as a separate pass at the end. But for my default model pass, I am all good to go. So I have these animations with a counteracting movement, and they go throughout the whole timeline. If you like, you can adjust the timing, make them faster or slower, or speed them up in the beginning or anything like this. I have my animations here. And you see from the default lighting, you already see the shininess or the metal-like shining parts of this model. Now, one thing which you may wonder is if you, for a filmic view, if you want the model really to be that shiny, because sometimes if it's too shiny, it can look a bit too CG artificial. Now, the complete opposite would be to put like rust and dirt and stuff like this. Now, I definitely don't want to go for this. I like the shiny model too much for that. But one thing what we could do, just to add a little bit of irregularity, if you just want a quick fix in Fusion, if that's what you want, you could just add a little bit of noise to one of the textures, and we could judge this again in the final view, but just maybe for demonstration, a little bit of noise to the diffuse texture. If I do this, just a fast noise here, let me bring in again 2 views. And if I add this, so I just bring in a merge here, connect it, and let's see, is this doing anything right now? No, but I can make this. First of all, the noise, I should match my texture dimensions. So it's a 4K texture. So in the fast noise, I need to go to width and height of the same, 4096. And then I want much more detail. So you can detail and scale. So scale makes more or less pockets, and then detail makes them like more distinct or more textured in each of these. So if I bring the scale up, now here you see the noise is is appearing, and I will, at the moment it goes between transparent and white, so I want it to go between black and white, and of course not like this. So either bring the blend down or maybe just do an overlay, so you get white and black spots. So overlay is an apply mode where both dark tones and bright tones come through, but through the old texture. So it's a combination of multiply and screen, if you know a bit about these apply modes, maybe from Photoshop or so. So overlay is keeping the original texture, and then darker and brighter spots are getting through. I definitely need to adjust this much more. So scale, let's bring this really up. So maybe something like this, and then of course bring the contrast way down. So if you just want a hint of irregularity, you could do something like this maybe, just to get a bit rid of this perfection, just a tiny little bit maybe. Or if you want, you can even add more than one of these, make one coarse noise, which gives like some wide range color changes, and some very detailed noise, which makes this kind of detailed irregularity, something like this. You can, this way you can easily adjust a perfect texture in something that maybe looks a bit more authentic perhaps. Okay, I leave that up to you. Maybe I adjust the noise or remove it. I will think about it later, and for now I'm good with this. Okay, this was it for the model import, textures, internal animations. So this model is now ready to go and ready to be integrated into the scene. And the next bigger topic is, well, getting the scene, getting a 3D scene set up, and getting a camera track for this where I can place this model. And this is the topic for next week's tutorial. So if you have any question about what you have seen so far, if you have any issues with following along or with the files or anything, let me know in the comments. I try to help out, and then I'm looking forward to the next part of it. My name is Bernd. Thanks for watching. See you then.